All right, we're going to jump into our January 2020 DevOps for Defense. I know it's holidays and I know the weather's bad, but thank you so much for coming out. As we said, we're going to kind of, at the request of some folks in the community who interestingly didn't show up today, we're just going to take a step back and do some basics, some 101, hit the ground floor, and then work from there. So code of conduct, as always, this is obviously an unclassified space. Please treat each other with respect. We're already seeing that. Great job. Nobody wants to know your secret sauce, so keep it secret. But do talk about your experiences and what you need. Share your thoughts, learn from others. And the guys at Rocket are great. They let us use this place for free, and they set everything up for us. So please, on your way out, show them some respect. Coming up in February, we're going to have a big event. Hans Doctor, the CEO of Gradle, is going to fly in from San Francisco to talk to us. I'm very excited about that. Some of the stuff that they've been doing with their Gradle Enterprise that gives you real-time feedback from your entire build system is really incredible. I got to see a short demo of it back in October, and it kind of blew me away. So I'm really excited about that. GitLab has stepped in and asked if they could come and speak to us, so they're lined up. I think Dan's going to come down from GitLab in March, and we'll see what they've got going on. And then we're looking at a few opportunities for some speakers and some activities going out through the rest of the year. So I'm real excited about what we've got lined up. We were just talking about doing a machine learning and AI activity in the springtime, so I think we'll certainly not run out of topics. We had, last month was our 2-year anniversary. I know some of you got to come, some of you didn't. We had about 70, 75 people here, and we made T-shirts, and all the proceeds from our T-shirts went to Girls Who Code and Miss Marshall up at Liberty Middle School. We were able to raise about $300 to help them get started. And Miss Marshall has about 30 young ladies who are really excited about some projects that they're getting started with. The problem they're having is getting started. So they're looking for anybody who's willing to just take an hour of their time and help these young ladies get their heads around how to get started on a project. They have incredible imaginations and are really motivated and really excited. They just need that little bit of help to get things rolling. So if you're willing to give an hour of your time, feel free to reach out to Miss Marshall. I found her through girlswhocode.com. She's at Liberty Middle School, just up the street. There's another chapter at Discovery Middle School. There's one at the Huntsville Boys and Girls Club, and there's one at Decatur Elementary. So we've got quite a few chapters around the area. Feel free to reach out to whichever one you think would work for you. All right, for the last couple of months, we've been actually recording and publishing our meetup on YouTube. So if you ever miss a month and you want to go back and see what we were doing, I've started publishing those now. You can subscribe to our channel and see what's going on. So far, we've got, 2 months and 3 videos. Last month, we broke up into 2. 2 hours was our new record, 2 hours of presentation. It was crazy. And if you like what we're doing, consider helping us out. I know it doesn't look like a lot this month, but it does actually take some resources to pull a meet-off up and make it all happen. So nothing's mandatory, but if you like what we're doing, please feel free. So I thought we'd kind of roll back and tell a little bit of an origin story, right? So where did this whole DevOps thing come from, and what makes it this superpower that we're all hearing about from Congress and the Department of Defense and all that? Why does it matter to us? So in the beginning, there was waterfall. And then now we're coming up on, 19 years ago, almost, I guess next month will be 19 years. The Agile Manifesto came out and it really kind of changed everything. You started seeing things coalesce around different patterns and practices. You started seeing, especially software and IT development, really shape and start taking steps towards adopting a core set of practices. There were a lot of battles. At the end of the day, within the Agile community, I would say Scrum really won out. And when you look at the broader sense from a software development lifecycle, IT development approach, Agile really won out. We still, though, have pockets of waterfall advocates in our industry and our customer, and we continue to struggle to actually do what Agile says we should do, to deliver value to our customers, our warfighters, continuously. So DevOps really, you can trace it back to about 2008. I think, for me, where I saw the real core of this hit in the real world was the Velocity Conference in 2009. John Allspaw, if you haven't watched this presentation, John Allspaw and Paul Hammond were from Flickr, and they did a presentation called 10 deploys per day. And as you can imagine, when you're used to deploying every 6 months or every 12 months, 10 deploys per day kind of blew up everybody's heads. Like, what on earth are you doing? It's a great presentation, a great story, and a lot of people attribute that presentation to being the origin of DevOps. So I would argue that DevOps really has a lot of the attributes of Agile and actually aligns to what the Agile Manifesto is trying to accomplish, but all too often our Agile practitioners, they really failed to achieve the goals of Agile by declaring victory too early. Do things, I'll give you a simple example. My velocity is great. I completed everything in my sprint backlog. Hooray, high fives all around. Okay, that's great. Did that result in any value to your customer, to your end user? Did they care? They don't care about your sprint backlog. What did you actually do in the real world? And DevOps was really that attempt to say, stop stroking your own ego and creating your own vanity metrics and make something happen in the real world for people who you're trying to serve. And it was really about breaking down the barriers between development teams who were running their Agile scrums and doing great work, but not delivering. And so you had conflict between development and operations, development looking for change, rapid change, operations looking for stability. So Agile really influenced DevOps significantly, but so did industrial engineering, so did Lean, the work of Deming, the Toyota production system. All of these factored in and really started to build up what we now see as the core of DevOps. Now, it's important to realize neither Agile or DevOps should be an end goal of themselves. They are not the goal. The goal is to do something meaningful in the real world. So if you have a goal to be more Agile, well, okay, you can pull that off. You can check your box. But that's not going to have the kind of effect that you really want. You want to be looking at defining measurable, meaningful goals and doing things like encouraging learning organizations. Experiment and fail fast. Look for ways to break your work down, do small batches that you can deliver and have a meaningful impact on a system, on a user, on a warfighter, in a way that really demonstrates that you're having the kind of value generation that you're looking for, that your value streams are working and matter. And then communicate. Make sure that whatever you're doing, whether it's through your Agile processes or through the components and elements of your DevOps infrastructure, that you're really using that to help communicate throughout the entire value stream. So why do we do DevOps? This is what the commercial world says. So you're going to get 46 times more frequent deployments with 440 times faster lead times. Now these numbers actually came out of the 2017 State of DevOps report. If you're not reading the State of DevOps report, it's a free report that gets published annually. I think we're up to 7 or 8 reports now, so almost a decade's worth of analysis and data. It's really fascinating. And a lot of this, if you haven't read Accelerate by Nicole Forsgren and Jez Humble, a lot of the science behind how they put these together is documented in that book. It's a phenomenal read. I'd highly recommend it. And it gets to the cores of what we're doing here. We're trying to work to deliver value faster to our customers, and we're trying to do it safer with lower failures and a faster time to recovery when we do see that failure. And the data shows that it works. And interestingly enough, data also shows that when you do it right, you're more secure, you're more likely to meet your objectives, and you're more likely to have a team who enjoys doing it. So it's kind of this nirvana. Everything comes together and really hits on all cylinders. So here's kind of the key capabilities. I put this in for completeness, but there's really 4 areas: technology and automation, process, measurement and monitoring, and culture, that all have demonstrated measurable correlation with productive teams, with highly successful teams. I'd highly recommend you read through the Accelerate book, as it goes through a lot of this and talks about where you're going to find the benefits for your team. A couple I do want to point out: the number one indicator of a highly performing team is good version control. It's number one. If you're not using good version control, you're fundamentally not going to have a good performance. So that's the number one thing. And I would certainly challenge you to make sure that you understand your version control and that you're using good practice or best practice in there. So where does this take us? The core of DevOps. DevOps is often described as the 3 ways. The first way is systems thinking and flow. This goes back to the ideas of industrial engineering. What are the inputs to your system? What are the outputs of your system? What are the things you're trying to achieve? And what are the transformations that have to take place to achieve that? So you can, if you've read books like The Phoenix Project by Gene Kim, you'll see there's a story in there that makes an analogy of a production facility to software and IT development and the knowledge workspace that we often work in. It turns out it's absolutely valid. It's what are those steps that you have to take, and how do you optimize those steps so that you can move quickly and safely in everything that you do. The second way is about feedback. If you're not monitoring that process and you don't know what outcomes you're trying to achieve, then you're not going to know that you're being successful, right? You're not going to know that you're having a problem. And if you're having a problem and you don't know it, that's probably the worst place you can be. So you want to make sure you have feedback. You want to make sure you're monitoring the right things, and that feedback is helping you continuously improve. That gets into the third way, experimentation and learning. This is really cultural, and it gets into this question of how do I ensure that I'm always improving? How do I ensure that I'm always adding more value? I do it through experimentation, and I have to have psychological safety in my workplace in order to do this. A really interesting study from Google a couple of years ago came out and said the number one indicator at Google for highly successful teams is psychological safety in that team. And that psychological safety allows them to experiment and learn continuously. A couple of years ago at the DevOps Enterprise Summit, they kind of had a theme, and that theme was outlearn the competition. I feel like in our industry we've been falling back on that. We haven't really been keeping up. The threat, the enemy, has really been moving fast, and we've been stuck in process. So we need to look for ways to safely do the experiments, move faster, learn faster, so that we can exceed and accelerate faster. Our customer often describes it as getting inside the adversary's OODA loop. If we can't move faster than their decision cycle, we're not going to win. And that's really a challenge for us. So experimentation and learning is key to that. I do like this. I'm going to point it out. simple things. So what's your software development life cycle? If your development life cycle is denial, bargaining, anger, depression, and acceptance, you're probably doing it wrong. When you're in a team that's really performing well, people are actually having fun. They're enjoying things. They're learning. So you can usually tell if a team is successful if the team looks like they're actually having fun with what they're doing. If they're not, chances are you're not going to be successful. So look for ways to not only achieve your goals, but do it in a way with processes and techniques and technologies that allows people to continuously learn and improve and enjoy the work that they're doing. So the first way is really all about systems thinking and flow. I like the idea of flow because that just ties straight into probably the next chart. But if you want to understand this in depth, first of all, for flow, the idea of flow, I would highly recommend Continuous Delivery by Jez Humble and Dave Farley. It's an outstanding book. It is a textbook. Do not think this is a novel. But it walks through the process. It walks through everything. It's really incredible. Systems thinking is more of a call to step back and understand the work that you're doing. Understand how you're doing your work, but also why you're doing your work the way you're doing it. And how are you optimizing? What are you optimizing for, right? So there's a phenomenal presentation on systems thinking that was done at the DevOps Days Chattanooga this last year. It was their closing keynote. I don't know if I've put it up on the website, but I will. It was a phenomenal presentation, and it talked about the factors that drive your system being your development life cycle, and how you need to balance and manage those actively if you're going to be successful. So flow really gets into the idea of a continuous delivery pipeline. I hope everyone's using pipelines. I hope everyone's pipelines are only pulling content from configuration management. But fundamentally, the pipelines get into the idea of automating all the things, right? My build should be automated. My QA checks should be automated. My unit tests should be automated. My acceptance tests should be automated. All of this stuff needs to be automated in such a way that it can complete very rapidly and provide incredibly fast feedback to the team who is developing that product or that capability. So you can think of continuous delivery as a continuous integration on steroids. It goes beyond the build unit check, check style. It really takes you forward into automated acceptance testing. But more importantly, provisioning, deployment, smoke testing. How do you get into that target environment and get confidence? If your continuous delivery pipeline is not producing confidence as its number one thing, you're probably not thinking about continuous delivery pipelines the right way. When you go and you look at places in the commercial world, you look at your Googles and you look at your Amazons and you look at your Netflix and your Facebook, they're so confident in their pipeline that they have transitioned from continuous delivery to continuous deployment by automating the stage in the pipeline that makes the decision to deploy into real-world operations. And I don't think we're going to be doing that in our domains, but we should be trying to achieve the same level of confidence in our pipelines that we could have a serious conversation about doing that. And until our pipelines are of sufficient quality, it's not worth dealing with. And I don't think we will in any near term, but I think that's a laudable goal to get to that point. So I kind of like to think of this as a commercial I saw on the TV a while back. It said, here at Wendy's, we build quality into our burgers, right? Well, so we should be using our pipelines to build in these ilities, right? Your pipelines can build in quality. They can build in security. They can build in deployability. They can build in reliability. All these things can be built in if you look for ways to do it. And it turns out it's actually not that difficult or expensive to put these things into a pipeline. Most all of them, if not all, not quite all, but most all, are open source and free. So you do have to spend a little bit of time stitching them together, but for the most part, a sprint or two, you could have all of these things baked into your pipeline. And I would highly recommend that you take a hard look at your pipeline and work on fleshing that out with the same kind of focus that you deal with feature development. The second way is feedback. A couple of quotes here to kind of put things in play. I talked about it a little bit earlier. My favorite one here is, if engineering at Etsy has a religion, it's the Church of Graphs. If it moves, we track it. Sometimes we'll draw a graph of something that isn't moving yet, just in case it decides to make a run for it. So it kind of gets into the idea, I like to use the term operational telemetry. What's the telemetry coming out of your system, and how are you turning that data into knowledge? If you don't have visibility into what your system's doing, you can't manage it and you can't advance it. You can't optimize it. And oftentimes that's really what we need to be able to do, is optimize those systems. So the second way should really be about not only instrumenting your target system, but also the processes and tooling that you use to produce, develop, deploy that target system. And just as a reminder, coming out of that State of DevOps report, one of the key 4 areas is measurement and monitoring. So it's an area to take really close look at in terms of feedback. And you want to make sure that you're looking at all good sources of feedback. You're going to hear things from your team developing that product that are going to be really great insights, and you should pay attention to that. Even on occasion, management will come up with a good idea, or they will see something coming down the pipe that is important that the team needs to understand and accommodate. What's going on in operations is absolutely critical and should be part of the team as well. And of course, the Defense Innovation Board put out a report last year called Detecting BS in Your Agile Process. If your user is not part of your process, you're not Agile, according to the Defense Department, right? The third way is experimentation and learning. You really have to look and just explicitly create opportunities for learning. One thing that I found out from asking was, how do you go about making a transformation, and how do you change the culture? Because this is really cultural. And I was told by multiple companies that the way they went about making that transformation in their organizations was to start book clubs. If you don't have a book club in your company or in your program or in your IPT or whatever your structure is, I would highly recommend that you start one. It's not expensive, right? Buy a book every couple of months. It's not a great personal burden. Reading a book is not that difficult, but it's a great way to get started. And then how you apply that to what you do at work. How do you learn from your failures? If you don't have the feedback, it's really hard to learn. So it kind of goes back to the second way. And you need to be able to do this quickly. So knowing how to get smarter, I really like this. I can't remember who I stole this from, but knowing how to get smarter faster matters a lot. So the faster you can learn, the more successful you're going to be, is the bottom line. Goes back to the idea, outlearn the competition. And whenever you're experimenting, have discipline in what you do. The scientific method tells us how this is supposed to work. Define your hypothesis. So there's a great template that came out of a presentation from Jeff. I'm not going to botch that name, but I really liked it, and it's something that I try to use to say whenever I'm going to start something, I often hear, what's my minimum viable product? I say, well, what are you testing for? What are you trying to accomplish? And that allows you to step back and start to define your experiment, create your hypothesis, understand how you're going to measure that hypothesis, and then do the absolute minimum work necessary to collect what information you need to either validate or invalidate that hypothesis. And the process by which you do that, this came out of Eric Ries's book, Lean Startup. It's called the Build, Measure, Learn process. It's actually a great book as well. If you haven't read that, I would highly recommend it. Come up with your idea, do the absolute minimum amount of work necessary to produce a product that would satisfy that. or test the critical assumption that idea is based upon, collect the data, learn from that data, and then pivot. As you're doing this, make sure that you do it safely. Limit your blast radius. There are a lot of strategies that you can apply to do this. First and foremost, write it down. Make sure that you know what you're doing and why you're doing it. If you can't write down the why in your backlog, you shouldn't do it. And then there are technical strategies that you can do to ensure that you don't break other things in your system, whether it be feature toggles or versioned interfaces, etc. So it kind of hits the three ways. Now, there was a great book that came out in the last, I guess about a year ago, a little over a year ago now, by Mick Kirsten called Project to Product. And it really hit me to add to the basics of the three ways by really focusing additionally on the four types of work. So we've got these ideas of systems thinking, flow, feedback, and continuous learning experimentation. But now this concept says, and apply that across all phases of the work that you do. And there's fundamentally four kinds of work that you have to deal with. Features and value generation. That's what we do most of the time. Right? That's what everybody's concerned about. That's what your contract says you have to deliver. So that's where everybody focuses. Defects, I love to characterize defects as unplanned, mandatory investment. It's money you don't want to spend, right? And the only reason you're spending it is because your process wasn't good enough before. And then risks, we're never going to get out of the security business, right? Everybody's in the security business, and you're only getting deeper. So you bucket things like risk, reliability, maintainability into this category. And then debt. Debt is technical debt. Simply, what are the things that are present in your system, in your design, in your process that are impediments to you making progress, that are slowing you down? And the flow framework's a really cool idea that came out of this book, but the one thing that really hit me is you have to actively plan across these four types of work. If you choose to not plan to work down debt, risks, and defects, you're going to fail. Bottom line. So when you sit down to lay out your next 3-month, 6-month, 12-month, whatever, plan, roadmap, whatever you call it, how much are you planning to put into defects? How much are you planning to put into risks? How much are you planning to put into burning down your technical debt? That's a really strong indicator of a mature team when you understand what you have, especially in terms of technical debt, and you actively plan to work that down. Now, that's not to say burning down technical debt's mandatory. It's absolutely not. Right? It's not a defect. It's not mandatory. But it is the thing that you need to do to help you work faster. So I did want to hit on the 5 ideals, but since we started the book club last month, I thought we'd do it as part of a book club discussion. I don't know if anybody here got the book from the book club, so maybe we'll defer this till next month. But just to hit on it quickly, a couple months ago, Jin Kim put out his new book, The Unicorn Project. If you've read The Phoenix Project, this will be very familiar. You're at Parts Unlimited, and it's really if the Phoenix Project was from an operations perspective, the Unicorn Project is from the developer perspective. It's a really, really cool dovetail into that story. Now, I've heard it said that you don't need to read the Phoenix Project first, but I think I got a lot out of it by having read that first. In this book, Gene identifies and puts forward these 5 ideals: locality and simplicity. This says basically teams need to be autonomous, and you need to have enough simplicity so that you can understand what's going on. The more complex your system is, the less understandable that system is, the less diagnosable, the less responsive you can be. Focus, flow, and joy. If you can work that system, if you can get your systems thinking right, if you can build your flow in, it will have that reaction of creating joy in your teams. They feel like they accomplished something. And that's what everybody, I think, wants to do. Improvement of daily work. The improvement kata, straight out of Toyota Production System. Look for that one small way to improve something every day. Doesn't have to be a grand improvement, but that one small thing that makes tomorrow better. Psychological safety. Make sure that it's okay for someone to say, this is wrong, this is broken, I don't like this, the way this is going, without being, crucified, kicked off the team, whatever. And then customer focus. Customer focus is kind of a cool one, because I think in our world, we often have a real challenge here. I have a contract customer, and then I have a user customer. Which one matters? Well, they both matter. But sometimes they're in conflict. And figuring out with your team how to make sure that you have the right focus on the right customer at the right time is a real challenge in our space. And so this one, I think, this one kind of hit me pretty hard as being critical to our success in our industry and for our warfighter, but also a significant challenge. So with that, a couple of resources. One I wanted to point out. Actually, I was wrong. It's not on this list. Some great resources up on the website. There's links to all of this material up there on devopsfordefense.org/resources. There's also a ton of great material on YouTube if you're interested in digging deeper and deeper. For example, just go on YouTube and search for Jez Humble. You will learn something amazing, I promise. And that is the end of our presentation. We'll go into the lean coffee. We've got just enough people to do maybe 1 or 2 lean coffees. That might be kind of fun. We've been so busy with big events the last couple of months, we really haven't done this. So a lean coffee, for those who are new, let me just run through how this works. Each table has a facilitator. All a facilitator does is like check the time and stuff, maybe introduce the topic. There's some cards on the tables and some pins. All you do is think about something that you're interested in talking about. It doesn't matter what it is. You just think about something that you're interested in, a question, a subject. You write it down. You get a few minutes to do that. You put them all out in the middle, and then everybody at the table gets to vote. You get 3 dots. You can put your dots wherever you want. You can put 3 dots on 1 card. You can put 1 dot on 3 cards. It doesn't matter. It's up to you. And then the facilitator organizes those in the priority order. More dots, higher priority. We set a timer for 5 minutes. We run through open discussion on the subject, on the card, and when that timer ends, then the discussion ends, and we vote. Either thumbs up, I'm really enjoying the conversation and I want to keep learning more with my peers. Thumbs down, I've learned everything I need on this topic. Or thumbs sideways, I'll defer to my peers at the table. So a couple of suggested topics based on today. Thought, a discussion of some elements of the 3 ways of DevOps, DevSecOps, that's a big deal in our industry and where we're going, or maybe some discussion around the 4 types of work might be some interesting topics. So a couple of things for you to think about going into a lean coffee. So that ends the presentation part. Thank you guys for showing up, and let's find a table.